Hello, everybody. We're seeing the splash screen for just a momentarily. Saw the splash screen for um, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen is well because that's the game I'm playing, and I just kept the stream. And yes, we should have a dedicated podcast screen, which I'll get to it one of these days, but not today. Today we're gonna be talking back again about game development and talking about news and talking about the possibility of we briefly talked this in the past about unionizing game developers,
Hmm.
and which is pretty. I think it's a pretty interesting topic. So let us then begin with the news. Uh,
Did you find much? Because I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't paid too much attention to the news this week.
it's understandable. Let's start with something esoteric that doesn't include. Actually, it's a kind of feel good news. Um, uh, Something esoteric. An elite dangerous pilot has been stuck in space for 3 months. Uh, Elite Dangerous Pilot Commander Diluvian Reyes Cruz has been stranded in space for 3 months and is hoping to set a record for the furthest distance traveled from Sol. He has been instead found himself trapped in the lifeless abyss beyond the edge of the Milky Way, no doubt risking space madness. It took him over a month to reach the point, and he's been stuck there since November. This week's rescue is finally in sight. The idea basically is that, Elite Dangerous, which I do have on, and I sort of briefly played, but I found the controllers a bit too hard for me because
Hmm.
I'm a wimp, even though I love space games. You can go anywhere, right? And this guy decided, oh, I'm gonna go beyond the Straits of the Galaxy and see how far I can go. And well, he got stuck there, and now other players are working to rescue him, to take him out. Um, I suppose you could say, well, why doesn't he load up an earlier save or something like that? Well, I don't know. Maybe he just wants to make sure that that's where he reaches, and he doesn't want that progress to be raised. And also,
Hmm.
it's sort of a multiplayer environment, so I guess it's permanent in that sense. Uh, he says that Cruz has beaten some all records in previous games, and on his sixth before disaster struck, has passed his personal best. Unfortunately, he got too eager, maybe a bit cocky, and found himself unable to frame shift after burning all his fuel. The
Hmm.
fuel rat's rescue has been long and probably incredibly dull. Multiple commanders are involved in help refuel rescue ships, mine resources, and then get cruise ship running again. It took 3 days just to create the plan and work out the logistics, while the five commanders, 2,576 tons of fuel and 635 limpet mines they set up, so only two of them would reach cruise. So I think it's I talk about how I really don't like multiplayers a lot, and Ace Combat 7 being one of them, and I try to get into Apex Combat Apex Legends, and I have it in my computer, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try it, but I got Dragon's Dogma to play, whatever. But these are the kind of stories where you're like, yeah, there's cooperation as well, right? I think one of the reasons why I don't like multiplayer myself, it's to sort of everybody wants to be the best direct competition, which a lot of people thrive on. But to me, it's like, I just want to go at my own pace. So, F you. But this seems like a pretty cool story. You had one about Square Enix, correct?
Yes. So apparently, Square Enix is gonna restructure their studios, their
Mm.
internal. They're doing a mass consolidation within their departmental units. So uh, it kind of seems, ooh, kind of a. If you've been paying attention to the Activision news, you might be like, "Oh, consolidation." That usually means, shrinking down and maybe firing people. There hasn't been anything about any layoffs. It just seems that they are trying to consolidate their divisions into four distinctive units by 2019, or by the end of 2019. They currently have 11.
Mm.
So it seems to be their effort in trying to increase the efficiency of their workflow and make their resources more effective.
I mean, yeah, restructuring sounds like a very scary idea, mostly because it basically means people are gonna get fired. But there's something about Japanese companies that they're loath to fire people if need be, mostly for cultural reasons. The idea is that when you go to work for a Japanese company, that's what you're gonna do for the rest of your life, right? Uh,
Yes.
and either you stay where you are at a point of company and just work hard and part of the machine, or you are one of the few people who actually climb the ladder and have ambition. But the idea of people, oh, I work for this company for 4 or 5 years and I'm going to go work for someone else because I have this set of skills and I'm a free agent. That doesn't mean that doesn't exist in Japan, but the tendency is sort of like, hey, I did my schooling. I went to university. I got good grades or whatever grades you got. This is what I'm good at. And there's a sense in Japan that you should be the best of whatever you choose to be, like a sort of sense of trying to achieve perfection. Right? If you're a game designer, you're gonna be the best game designer you're able to do. You're a manga artist. Try to be the best manga artist you can be, etc. Within your own limits, of course, your own style, etc. If you're a politician, you're supposed to be the best politician, etc., etc. That's an ideal, at least.
Hmm.
So it doesn't surprise me that they're doing this, and I think it's very interesting that again, they're not dumping studios; they're consolidating them. Which it's we talked about how I expressed the idea that there's something wrong in the game industry of how we make games, and how these companies sort of keep buying studios and acquiring stuff like that. And it's like, well, sometimes you just gotta look at what you have as this is not working for us, so let's see how it works, right? As opposed to just buy something and then sell it and buy it again and buy something else, and you know. Um,
Yeah.
uh, in other news, Steam is getting rid of all its non-gaming videos. For people who didn't know, yes, Steam sold more than just games. It sold movies as well, and also utility software and the like. And
Hmm.
apparently, 3 hours ago, you may have forgotten the Steam sell. This is from PC Gamer as well. You may have forgotten the Steam sells movies, but it does for some unexpected reason. It's okay. Valve probably forgot too. It's finally remember how it had decided to retire its largely invisible part of Steam.
Hmm.
Um, again,
I
yeah.
think I've stumbled across that maybe one time, and it might have been game related movies, like
Mm-hmm.
sort like maybe like the Gill or the Angry Video Game Nerds movie, just or something, or like a video game documentary, but not. I wasn't even sure that they like. I didn't know if is this like movies like say something new like I don't know, like let's just say I don't think of nothing like some Oscar movie.
Well, here's some examples. Beach Volleyball Detectives Part 1, which, by the looks of the screenshots, it looks exactly what you think it is.
Hmm.
Bikini, Japanese bikini thing going on. Jigsaw, which is in a horror movie, and
Okay.
My Little Pony, the movie.
Hmm. Okay. So yeah. So not every movie under the sun, but it's just
No.
maybe like game something that people who are into gaming might also be into these kind of other genres or movies.
It also might be that a lot of people, big studios, have like that either have their own platforms, uh, or never saw Steam as a place that really could sell movies. So it's if people who made movies didn't think of Steam as a platform to selling them, and the people who weren't Steam didn't think of a platform to buying them, then it's nobody did anything. So there you go. That's what you got. Nobody was doing anything, and so oops, it didn't work. I mean, good for them for trying. GOG has the same thing. I think GOG is mostly about documentaries and stuff like that. Also, almost always game related, but they have, of course, a smaller venue. I think they have some success in that arena, but not a huge lot of it. So, um, yet again, in other news, if you remember what a MOBA is, well, if you remember, you might remember Heroes of New Earth. Once League of Legends' biggest competitor stops major updates after 10 years. According to the byline at PC Gamer, the mobile wars are long over. Um, which, to put people in perspective, MOBAs were the big thing that came out of the sort of the collapse of the MMO market. And I mean, Heroes of New Earth began in April 2009. So we got, and the League of Legends and were vying for, according to the article, the two were vying for win over the audience of popular Warcraft 3 mod Defense of the Ancients, which that's where League of Legends came out. And yeah, I think we see the same thing with Blizzard. They're cutting back on their own mobile, right? They came in very late into it, at least a sort of public competition. So yes, this is the thing, that things that we think are going to be and were for a time huge, eventually people sort of move on to the whatever the next thing is, and so following the trend of the big game can net you money today, but not necessarily net you money tomorrow. Or you come in so late that you never really make it any dent on what it is.
Yeah, I, it makes me wonder when we'll finally see, say, like the fall of something like World of Warcraft. Just like, oh, we're we're done with World of Warcraft. Shut it off.
I think it's
I
gonna be
mean,
just like this news. It's like side news. Oh yeah, we find out that this is what's happening. That's it. And
yeah,
we're gonna go like, okay, sure.
but I'm sure when it comes to that point, it'll be either Blizzard went out of business because of Activision, or because they made some newer iteration of World of Warcraft, and then people jumped aboard on that and aren't playing WoW anymore. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Doesn't mean it will never happen though.
Now that I found this again in PC Gamer very interesting, since we are streaming this, and this applies to China. But we talked about companies that own a lot of other companies and investors, and we talked about Tencent before. The news is Tencent imposes new regulations on streamers in China. The rules are intended to foster a healthy environment and ensure that everybody complies with the law. The points, the 12 values that Tencent is saying to their streamers. Violation of Chinese social values involving sensitive topics such as politics, ethnicity, and religion. Huh. Promoting or publishing content that violates China's social values, including but not limited to pornography, gambling, and terrorism. Okay? This idea of China's social values, and its translation for the values imposed by the still existing Communist Party of the Chinese, the People's Republic of China, PRC, as opposed to the Chinese Republic, which is, well, yeah, controversial. Behavior that damages the Tencent game brands directly or indirectly. Wow, that's a big iffy right there. It's like, what does I mean, some things are very clear. Some of it is like, okay, could be anything. Distributing false information to other users through any means. Well, okay, don't be a liar. I get that. Engaging in vulgar or indecent information. Again, outside of nudity or just swearing, I don't. Distributing promoting game chess software or cheat software, virus software. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Promoting excessive violence in games or in the real world. Okay. Infringing on the privacy of others users or revealing other users' information without permission. Okay, that makes actually perfect sense. Don't dox people. Failure to abide by rules of the contract signed with third-party streaming platform. Well, again, probably that was something that people like Twitch might push for, right? Infringing the copyright of game makers or other content creators. That's interesting because China has a very dodgy relationship with international copyrights. But now that Chinese companies are owning Western game developers like Tencent, those copyrights once were foreign, now they're actually Chinese in a way. So it's don't violate our copyrights or future copyrights of things that we already could get into and buying, so that we don't have to deal with Chinese law and international law. So that's more self-protection. It makes perfect sense. But again,
Yeah, a bit hypocritical though, isn't it?
yeah. Causing disputes or adverse social impact. No drama?
Well, so that kind of gets a bit into maybe I don't know, a bit fascist,
It's
kind of like,
the
yeah, be like, ooh, you're inside. Ooh, you talked about like some policy, some government policy you didn't believe in. Oh, you're inciting, a riot and stuff. We're shutting you down.
yeah. Other actions that don't comply with current laws, ethics, and game regulations. And China is known for their, you know.
Hmm.
And here's a quote from them. We note that China's regulators have been pushing for a healthier environment in both games industry and live streaming industry more strongly recently. Nico Partners said. A number of live streaming sites and streamers have been banned in the past for hosting questionable content. There have also been regulations that prohibit streaming of games that are not approved for sale in China. Yeah. Of course, I'm sure there's a if when this comes out, there's a lot of people out there gonna go like, well, that's what regulations happen when you get government to regulate stuff. This is like you have to read the letter of the rules and understand how they're implemented. Just because it's a regulation doesn't mean it's bad. Like anything else, it can be exploited. I'm looking at you, microtransactions and loot boxes. And not all regulations are made the same. So if you try to use this as an argument against regulations, you gotta come at me with more than just regulations are bad. Okay, just as a warning out there, folks, to take it easier. Again, going back to happy news, for those who are happy about this news, Darkest Dungeon 2 is coming, and I saw the teaser trailer. It has the same announcer as Darkest Dungeon. And here's an interview. I'm not gonna discuss the entire thing here because we'll have 3 hours, whatever, or 2.5 hours. But I will put the link to all of you. Here's Darkest Dungeon
Yeah,
link.
Darkest Dungeon was sitting on my PlayStation Vita until my PlayStation Vita memory card decided to die on me. But it's one of those games that's been sitting out in my back catalog for a while. It's
I played Darkest Dungeon briefly. So there's that. Sorry, did we? Sorry about that. I just activating something here. Yeah. Okay, never mind. Technical issues. That's why you're producing. You should set up everything before you actually start talking. Yeah, I mean, I played it briefly. I appreciate why people would play, and it was enjoyable. But then it was like, okay, I know this is just bash your head against the wall until you get it right kind of situation. At least that's how it felt to me. I may go back to it, and I also felt like I was getting into it after everybody else got into it, right? Kind of thing, like chasing a trend. I was like, well, what about just playing the game as is? So maybe I will probably give Darkest Dungeon 2 a chance. I do like the look of it. I like the narration. The mechanics are good. I mean, I like the combination of going out into the dungeon and doing things and the administration stuff. I like to integrate some of that stuff in my own games, tabletop games. So yeah, I'm hoping that they're promising some changes. If you guys want to figure out what it is, just look at the link and hopefully you enjoy it. Then we have Anthem.
Fucking prick.
Oh, sorry about that. You were not supposed to do that. Sorry, Twitch. That wasn't me. I mean, it was me because I should have checked, but we have news about Anthem, and you played a little bit of it. Have you gone back to play it again?
Oh no, I actually didn't get to play any of it because I hopped on just as they shut off the servers. But no, it's still technically well, hasn't been out yet. It's just the early, you pre-ordered it, whatever, you get to play it a week early kind of thing. So I haven't played it, and I honestly have no interest in playing it. It looks, from what I've seen other people talk about or show of it, it doesn't seem all that interesting.
I watch a couple of videos and reviews so far, and it seems like, yeah, it's very much what everybody predicted, that it was going to be a Destiny clone, right? The flying seems interesting. The shooting seems okay, but it's, Inside Gaming and did an article on that, and so Young Yet also talked about it, and it was like, yeah, this is not great. It certainly doesn't have the characteristic uh, stories that are tied to game like this. So from BioWare, so it's like, if you want to keep playing that game, you can just play Destiny 2 or the original. Oh, Destiny, original Destiny. Can you still play the original Destiny? I don't know.
Yes,
Yes, I
you
think you can.
can.
Yeah, you
And
can.
I see my cousin sometimes hops onto it every once in a while.
So do that instead, and you'll be fine. So joy, I guess. It's like, yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, there was really nothing that really captivated me about Destiny. Um, but well, and I played it briefly, and so it's like I don't think I'm gonna have a good experience with this as well. So, eh,
And some of it from the clips I've seen, just some of like the character interactions, it seems like some of the main character ones they're well animated, but it seems like everything else, like the regular people, are pretty lifeless. Not, it doesn't seem as quite as bad as Andromeda, but it doesn't seem that much of an improvement from, say, something like Inquisition, which, that game came out, what
five
was
five
that?
years ago, I think.
Like 5 years ago.
Yeah,
And
it was one of the first games that came out for the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4.
yeah,
Um,
they don't seem as lively as a game from 5 years ago. It's like, oh,
yeah, those are the details. And again, 2000 current year argument 2019. Today is not so much about how crisp everything else is about stuff like that, like little details, like how lively is. I mean, yeah, if anybody who's played like 1,000 hours of Skyrim, there's only so many times you can go like the same dialogue over and over again. I can forgive that of Dragon's Dogma, for example, which I'm playing right now, but I don't think I would be able to forgive it from Anthem. Like, especially if you have to be in this places like that for a long time. It's like you gotta be there. It's like, uh, I guess. Talking about Electronic Arts, well, and BioWare, and this one is coming from the bleedingcool.com. So let's take it as what it is. Fellow by Gavin Sheehan, I think its name is, has the following news for us. Electronic Arts files a new trademark for Jade Empire. For people who don't know, or may have forgotten, or weren't around playing video games at the time, Jade Empire was one of the games that was released by BioWare before BioWare got gobbled up by EA. And it was one of their first action games, action RPGs, where you literally control a character and you did kung fu moves and all that. And for people who played it, like myself back in the day, it was one of the last games they released for the Xbox. And in fact, it also marked a transition where BioWare was doing more titles, moving away from PC and doing more console stuff as well, or doing stuff across the board. And clearly, Jet Empire was a console game; it was designed for controller. And you work, sort of not ninja guy, but kung fu guy, sort of pseudo mystical China, going around and fighting people and getting orbs and getting stronger and fighting the enemies of the empire and trying to liberate the people. It's a fun little game, and a lot of people have been clamoring for a follow up or an update, an HD remake. They did make a remake, but well, I don't think the remake did much of anything. Especially when it came to the
did they?
controls, yeah, because the controllers, especially in the PC version, are not very good.
Oh, the special edition. That's
Yeah,
another one that's sitting in my backlog.
yeah. At least for PC gamers, the controllers. Again, that was a thing that while BioWare was making a transition to PC, from PC to consoles, somehow they forgot about PCs in a little while, and like, especially when it came to these action games. Like if you play the PC version of Mass Effect or Jet Empire, the controllers are not as crisp as the ones on, ironically enough, on the console, because it's not,
Yeah.
you know which people like. But I have a mouse and a keyboard. It should be like super perfect. Everything's like it doesn't necessarily work that way. And if you connect, you plug in a controller, it's they have to do some workaround to really make it work. But once you do that, especially if you have the original console version, yeah, could do well
Yeah,
with it. Yeah.
a funny story. So I'm not sure what year Jade Empire came out of. I want to say I worked at Walmart for, I want to say, let's say 2000, either 2005, 2006, sometime in the summer. And for some reason, we had one single, that was like the only Xbox original brand new game that we just had. And it was just sitting there, kind of just lying extra among our shelves. Jade Empire, $60 full price still.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, well, it's a testament to Walmart and how they kind of handle their inventory and kind of refuse to update their prices really as quickly. There were some weird, random shovelware games that were no one that was ever going to buy, and they were still selling them for like $60. But I distinctly remember that one because that, like Jed, and I remember looking at it. It's like, this game looks interesting. It's just I don't have an Xbox One. I'm not going to pick this game up for like $60. But yeah, that's like just something that's kind of burned in my mind. It's this Jade Empire game that we kind of had just kind of stuck on the side of the frame kiosk. Whoops, where well, they don't have the same displays anymore, but you could usually kind of wedge something in between like the casing and the actual glass partition. We just kind of wedged it there. Poor Jade Empire.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Talking about something we talked about last week, and I feel because Comrade Jim is doing such a great job, we should talk about him for a little bit. Comrade Jim Sterling, and yes, that is his official name now. He's Comrade Sterling. Made a video on Monday because, you know, it always says Monday is coming. Last Monday about Bobby Kotick, the president of Activision Blizzard. And he discussed some things that I did not know about Kotick. That was like, oh dear, oh boy, these are the facts. I'm just gonna link you to it because it really shows. Again, this is something we talked about ad nauseum, and we'll probably continue to talk about it. Comrade Sterling, fire Bobby Kotick. It's worth watching because some of the stuff that he mentions about how Kotick runs his businesses, not only, you know, and the kind of practices. There's one example where he was running a software development company, and one of the things that was happening was they were bankrupt, and the sheriff department went into seize their equipment, right? And one of them was a mainframe.
Oh yeah.
And what they did essentially, they just handed out like some second tier computer system that they had lying around. It's like, oh, you want a mainframe? Sure, here it is. And of course, I mean that's a clear violation of the law, and probably also the all the kind of things. It's like they basically fooled the sheriff department thinking that they had seized the right equipment. How did they not? Somebody looked at it and go like, yeah, that's not a mainframe. Mainframe takes an entire room. You would need like a warehouse to put in this.
Well, this happened mid 90s, early 90s, and
Yeah.
it's well, people weren't tech savvy back then. Even then, I don't think most people could tell you what a server looks like.
Yeah, this was a mainframe, not a server. Although mainframes served as centers of what today would be a server, but it's back in the day, you would have a mainframe, and I mean people still have PCs, of course, but usually what would happen is either your PCs or you would have terminals. So in essence, if you hand out, the way we handing around were either a subdivision or a PC or the monitors and the keyboard, the main computer was still there with all the data and all. That's the big money item, right? And
Hmm.
server rooms today can be like a closet. I worked at mainframe rooms, and mainframe rooms are like small warehouses. Mostly because, especially the older ones, in the 1990s that wouldn't have been the case necessarily. But the older ones, the ones who use tape drives, that you needed a lot of those units, right? So those took a lot of space, and even later on, you had hard drives and processing power that took quite a bit of a room, right? And often what would happen is that these would have. I mean, I work in a university where it had one of the mainframes was in a room that it had an automatic. It had big warnings because if there was a fire, the room would shut down and it would have a gas system that would essentially put out the fire, but also suffocate anybody who wasn't there.
Oh,
That's how
must have.
yes, that's how expensive and valuable mainframes were. Anybody in a way can create a server room nowadays, a couple of $1,000s. We're talking about machines that cost anywhere between tens of thousands to hundred thousands of dollars, even in 1990s. And yeah, that's not merely I got all one over the sheriff. That is fraud. Um, you know, so wow, yeah, if that's the kind of person that Mr. Kotick is. Oh boy, oh dear. That's just one example. Um, I mean, wow.
Well, uh, and what's sad is he's not going to get fired. There's
Oh no, 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 not at all.
not unless he starts running the company into the ground and the shareholders want him out. But as long
Well,
as they think he's doing a heck of a job, he's going to stay.
yeah. And I mean, the thing is that if he gets quote unquote fired, what's going to happen is he's going to get a golden parachute, right? He really probably has it on his
Contract.
contract. And the thing about it is, and this is one of the reasons why people and again, there's some cultural differences, but Jim Sterling makes a comparison to Iwata and a Nintendo. Again, the idea of the company entity superseding any individual is very important in Japan. So loyalty to the company. So the idea that Iwata, may he rest in peace, and top executive took pay cuts between 25% to 50% makes sense in the Japanese sense because it's like the company has to survive, right?
Hmm.
Right. We serve the company, and the company makes money, and we make money because the company is successful. Right. No, it's like the company serves us in a sort of and Western ideology. I mean, that's not true across the board as well in Japanese companies, and there's many other problems, especially in game development in Japan, which if you think people get exploited here in the West, also happens over there. But that I think was one of the things that you can make the comparison, right? It's like, oh, we made bad decisions. We took a hit with the Wii U. We took a hit with this. So we are the leadership, and we are going to take the hit, right? One of the things, of course, in the West and other places is that most of the compensation that CEOs and CFOs and others get is in stock. It's not only to get salaries, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps depending on it is, but most of their personal value being member of the company is the fact that they hold stock. And guess what happened with Activision in the past couple of months?
Oof, their stocks went down.
By 50%, which means that Bobby Kotick's personal valuation, not only the value of Activision Blizzard, but Bobby Kotick's significant personal not income but wealth, because it's not the money he's taking in every month or so, every year, whatever. Personal wealth got cut down by a significant amount, probably already by 50%. So it is in his best interest and the people in charge of the company to boost those stocks so they can boost their own personal gain. So their personal value, monetary value, goes up because it's tied to the company. And if they know that the markets will react possibly to people getting fired, because that's usually what the markets do, because they see it as as you reducing cost, and therefore more money is left to buoy up the value of the corporation, then of course that's a tendency to do so. If I'm working for a company and I get more profit just by having people fired. Even if I need those employees, there's a good and also have a golden parachute or a platinum parachute waiting for me if things go sour. There's no incentive to do an Iwata or do what Nintendo did and cut their salaries
No.
because there's no loyalty to the institution, right? There's not even loyalty to the company. It's a company works for us, not the other way around. I mean, loyalty to a strawman of the law is still problematic, but at least you see the trends and the way people think. And,
Yes.
no. So I'm gonna agree with Comrade Sterling in that one. Go like, yeah, I think, of course, he'll have a golden parachute, but and the fact that he got hired and that's something that people know about him, it shows a little more about corporate America in general and Activision Blizzard at this moment. And as we said before, you should check. I encourage everybody to check a history of Activision because Activision was started by a developer, a programmer from Atari, who got out of under Atari because Atari was doing stuff like not giving credit to their designers in their games and therefore not paying them as much as they did, right? And trying to do everything in house and trying to do things rush and trying to get into, by spending huge amounts of money on big properties like E.T. and Pac-Man so they could make their own games in house instead of having third-party developers. Atari Games Division made a lot of mistakes, and nowadays, 30, nearly 40 years later, Atari's just a mangled, misremembered brand, right? People recognize the look of, the little triangular version of Atari, but not much else. Aside from maybe thinking way back in the day, oh yeah, my dad used to play with Atari 2600 back in the day, maybe. Maybe there's one in the closet or somewhere, right? That's it.
It's so weird that they've sort of become the thing that that we're trying to get away from. I mean, and that's sort of that might be a topic for another day, but just the idea that you have these small companies that end up becoming bigger and bigger. And in an Activision case, it was trying to get away from a bigger company that thought it was being mistreated. And then it sort of, decades later, it's become the very thing it was trying to get away from.
Yeah, pretty much. And talking about that, as a reaction, and I think we're going to get into today's topic finally. On Kotaku published Liz Schuler was the person, the guest editorial, from the AFL-CIO, which is CIO, yeah, which is one of the biggest unions, private sector unions in the United States, if not the biggest. And I'm going to read quite a bit from this because it's important to get their message across so we can talk about it. And yes, at least I support this. So if you want to see if I'm biased, yes, there's right there's my bias. I think this is a very good idea. But we're going to discuss it because there's, there are actually some downsides to this or some problems with it as well. Let's start with the editor's note. Given an ongoing issue in the game industry, the FAL-CIO recently reached out to Kotaku about addressing the people who make games. The FAL-CIO represents more than 12 million workers in the United States across more than 50 labor unions. So it's a big conglomeration of labor unions, including the Writers Guild of America, which Kotaku and its sister sites staffs are members. This letter from the Secretary of Treasury Liz Schuler is the group's first major public statement about organizing game developers. We talked about this before, but this is the first time that people like groups like FAL-CIO have gotten involved. And this it touches on some other things. But the most meteoric success story can be found virtually all around us in the booming video game industry. Growing by double digits, U.S. video game sales reached $43 billion in 2018, about 3.6 times greater than the film industry record-breaking box office. It's an stunning accomplishment, one built by legions of tireless game developers. There's nothing more powerful than throwing yourself into your craft, putting in day after day of passionate hard work. Okay, so far so good. Throughout the fog of sleepless nights that fade into morning, piles of crumpled Red Bull cans, and incessant pressure from management, you've accomplished the unthinkable. You've built new worlds, designed new challenges, and ushered in a new era of entertainment. Now it's time for industry bosses to start retreating you with a hard-earned dignity and respect. And I think that should start the talk about whether or not game developers should in fact unionize. I'm not gonna. I already said my piece. I think, Chapman, do you have any statement you want to make about this, and we'll go from there.
So, from my understanding with unions, I have no personal experience with unions. I've never worked at a job with that had a union in it. So I have no personal idea of how unions even really operate, other than just the big idea of what they are.
Mm-hmm.
But considering how just the negativity that we were constantly hearing, not just the layoffs, not just the crunch periods, but it's also the culture that seems to permeate throughout all of these gaming developers. Like we've heard last year there accusations of Quadratic Dreams having this culture of sexual harassment in it, and not just them. Was it the studio that makes
Riot Games?
what's that? Riot Games?
Mm-hmm.
So something needs to change first off, because none of this is good. But the thing I think in a way, like, at the very least they should, just because
Mm-hmm.
if they don't do something, it's not going to change. But my thing is just kind of wondering what I, as a fan of video games, or just a gamer in general, can do. That's the thing that I kind of wish that it's one thing to say that, yeah, they can unionize, but I kind of wish, like, what can I do as a gamer, as a consumerist? I mean, we kind of all know that boycotts don't really work all that well,
Yeah.
and even then, it'd be kind of like, well, what do we, how do we pick and choose? Then everyone's going to have their different criteria, so I don't think boycotting is a thing.
Well, let me tell you what we shouldn't do. Because, and this goes into the image that unions have, particularly in the United States, it's extremely negative, right? And the irony of this, and most of it comes from Hollywood, of all places, even though the writers in Hollywood are unionized, the cameramen, the crews are unionized, yet a lot of the movies and television that Americans consume have a strong anti-union bias, right? And the scandals and the supposed connections to the mob and all these things have led to this idea that unions are bad, and also constant politicking, particularly from the right wing, but even from center and left, right? And so I think when players and consumers hear about unions, they think, even though there's no direct link to it, that, oh, if we have unions, the quality of the games are going to drop. If we have unions, we're going to lose out, right? And I mean, there's no proof of that. In fact,
Yeah,
we've been
honestly,
talking about a year now about this, and how many games have lost quality in the current system, right? So there's no proof that unionizing workers will make things worse, except perhaps with the bosses, maybe, right? So that's one thing. The one thing we shouldn't do is lambast people for trying to protect their rights, right?
Yeah.
I think we can support them. I mean, it's like many types of support, especially in social media. It basically all amounts to work. But if the developers, I mean, people, and that's another thing. People talk, oh, I'll buy microtransactions, I'll do loot crates, I'll loot boxes because I want to support this game and I want to support the developers. Well, how about supporting unionization, right? That's the best way for you to support the developers. Find ways, not yourself perhaps, but support ways that make sure that the people who make, and we talked about this before, we're going to continue talking about it because it's essential. The fact of the matter is that if somebody working 50, 60 hours a week, they cannot give you their best. It comes to threshold around 20 plus hours, not even 30 hours or 40 hours, of 20, between 20 to 40 hours, where you have diminishing returns. Somebody at 50 plus hours, they're gonna be in the keyboard going like, yeah, whatever, okay, and just their brains are gonna turn to mush, right? They're not capable of working at their best. One of the people who really get hit are the QA testers, because their QA testers are seen as the people who want to get in the game industry, right? That's the fanboys, right? QA testers are seen as the fanboys who become employees. And because of that, there's a sense of, oh, yeah, you guys are not real developers. You just want to sort of shoehorn our good thing. You're just a guy who plays the video games. Like, yeah, I'm the guy or gal who plays the video game, just like the people you are gonna sell the video games to, right? Mm-hmm. So if I don't do my job right, then when this product ships out, it's gonna be buggy, it's gonna be broken, and then you're gonna take it on the chin, right? It's also, we talked about this again before, not having devotion to corporations, right? Oh, I'm a fan of even subdivisions of corporations. I'm a fan of BioWare. Well, I can see you being a fan of a particular product, with the understanding of that is a product, but don't be a blind supporter of Blizzard or something like that, because, like we said, and we're probably going to talk about this in the future as well, you're going to have situations where companies get bigger and bigger and bigger. They change leadership, and the new leaders just want to keep growing the company. And we already talked about the fact that the best interest of the people on top are not necessarily the best interest of the people on the bottom. Mm-hmm. So,
and that's one of the reasons why I haven't bought Anthem. It's like, I love BioWare games, but this game does not seem interesting at all, and I have no interest in really playing it and no confidence in that it's going to be enjoyable, so I'm not going to buy it.
And like you said, we talked about last week or the week before about Anthem, the week before, because we talked about Apex last time, that some of the problems might be that if Anthem is successful, it might be the end of BioWare as a sort of entity of what it used to be, right? That it's no longer going to be the developer of substantial story-driven RPGs, is going to be just the developer of these sort of big, messy open worlds, the loot grind type games and filled with microtransactions. So it might survive as an entity, but not necessarily as what it was known to be and be the best. What else? I mean, there's some downsides. Some of them, of course, is the fact that you're going to have conflicts. If you give the power of unionizing to developers, you're giving them the power to strike. But hey, listen, let me tell you something. If you think that boycotts are not effective, let me tell you, strikes are pretty effective. Well, marginally so, but they can be effective. Look at what happened with the Voice Actors Guild, right? Part of the Actors Guild. They basically boycotted, and they got some concessions, which is better than none. Although they're now up for review this year, 2019 or 2020. I have to check that. But they got something, which is better than nothing, right? If, for example, the QA testers are part of the boycott, and you're worried about the quality of games, you should be worried about how these people are treated, and you want the best for not only designers, the developers, the voice actors, the people who make the games, but also the people who ensure that the bugs are detected and the glitches are detected in time, so that they are fixed. And if you watch a video like Jim Sterling and you're like, oh, this Carter guy is gonna keep getting away with everything. Well, the best way to, you know, punch him in the proverbial chins or kick him in the chins is to punching. I guess punching down. Biology. Is to have him, no matter where he goes in the video game industry, if he keeps going, you know, being a person who is in the video game industry, is going to be what? They're all going to be unionized, right?
Yeah.
Also, be weary of all the things. I mean, the American companies are very good at discouraging unionization. There's one thing that I think there's one big problem with the unionization, and that could, in the short term, it's not really the fault of the developers, but it's it also would require that the employees sort of stick together, because not all states, there's something called right to work states in the United States.
And that's where I live.
Exactly, which means the following, and this is one of the things of like, oh, but that seems fair, until you sort of run with it. By federal law, if there's a union, everybody has to pay the union dues. But there's a huge loophole, and that is that it's a state by state affair. There's states who have what called right to work, which by itself it's, you know, kind of manipulative in the language. They say no, you don't have to, which means your business can be unionized, but you don't pay the dues. You get all the benefits of being in a union, including mostly collective bargaining being the most important one. And we'll talk about that also in a second before we finish the game, the podcast. But pay none of the dues. So if, for example, there's a strike, right? The union actually covers your salary for a time. Where do you think that comes from? You know, the dues. If there's a lawsuit against a corporation and the union presents a lawsuit, what do you think comes from? The dues, right? Day-to-day operation of the union comes by paying for the dues. You're not paying because you don't want the benefits. It weakens the unions, right? There's no law that says, there's no contrary law that says, by the way, if you don't pay the union dues, you don't get any of the benefits. Most right to work states don't have that. So it's like, oh, you're going to get the benefits, but we can't force you to pay or be kind of a member of the union. And even if you're not a member of the union, rarely will a union shop company sort of single out non-union members and go like, well, everybody else got, you know, a $10 raise, but I'm going to deduct $10 from you. It's like, but why? Well, because they're not a union member and I made a deal with the union. But you're not a union member, right? So
Yeah.
that actually doesn't work that way, because, you know, that would mess up their payroll, right? And then you could sue them for discrimination, and, well, they don't want that. So again, you get all the benefits of a union without actually participating in it. And the risk of that is that many companies are now in highly unionized states like California and Washington State would move their operations to across the seas in places where there are no unions in the United Nations, or very weak union laws or unionization laws, or they will move across state lines to right to work states, right?
Yeah.
Also, game developers, again, we have from within the industry itself this idea of, and it's mentioned in this letter, open letter, is like, oh, you know, this is a wonderful job, you know, you're lucky to be here kind of situation.
Yeah.
Which comes from the days of garage coders and the like. But the average developer today is not the same person, unless they're making indie games or very small studios. The person that was coding in a Commodore 64 or an Apple II or Spectrum C Spectrum in their bedroom or garage in the United States or in Britain or Canada, whatever, right? Japan, or coding with a Mac, or, you know, doing their own thing, and could come up with a blockbuster game, right? Where going back in the days of Atari, you know, you only had 4K to play with, so usually just one person was doing all the coding for the version of Pac-Man or ET or whatever. You give them $10,000 and that's it, right? Oh, you do the game. The average developer of video games is a college graduate. for at least 4 years, and anywhere between 25,000 to over $100,000 in debt, right?
Yeah.
And they live in cities which have been high levels of gentrification, high levels of rent, which means they need to get paid a lot of money. Average, I think game developers
Hmm.
can earn as much as $100,000, but $100,000 in Wyoming is not the same thing $100, that in California, especially if you're living in around a big city like San Francisco or LA, right?
Or Santa
Or
Monica.
Santa Monica, right? Doesn't go as far. I mean, still a lot of money, right? And the average, let's talk about the average work time a developer works for a company. It's about 3 years because developers get burned out on the business. And not simply talk about going one company and then to another, is that people get burned out on the business already. So we have a high burnout rate. And if I moved across the country to work for Blizzard and Activision, and it's gonna be great, and I'm gonna get paid 100 grand. You left everything behind. I got 3 paychecks, and then, oh, by the way, you're part of the 8% that got fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're working for what was the other company that closed last year that was big on it as well? That was
Telltales.
Telltale. Oh, Telltale. I'm making stuff like the Breaking Bad
Yeah,
game or
that
whatever.
that
It's
that
like,
literally did happen to somebody
yeah,
who got hired and moved out like 2 weeks before they fired everybody.
you never saw that money, right? And while unions are not perfect and they don't guarantee you a job, here's the thing: if you are not going to go to Bobby Kotick and go like, I need a raise. That's never
Hmm.
going to happen. If you're a peon working on a campus, yeah, you get foosball tables and arcades in the corner with old Pac-Man, asteroid, whatever, and it's sort of, and that's also part of the mentality. That's sort of like you're still in college kind of thing, because they call them campuses instead of calling them like offices.
Offices.
But at the end of the day, no matter how many food tables and lazy chairs and open cafeteria plants and all that, and open office plants you have, and how many breakfast burritos you get, bloat up a plate or whatever, at the end of the day, you are doing a job, and you expect to get paid a salary because that salary goes to maintain your life, and to live. And so, it's your career, it's your job, it's a dream job. It should be a dream job, but the ability to negotiate one to one company versus an individual employee is extremely limited. All
Yeah.
the advantages go to the people who have the money, people who are paying you the paycheck. They get to decide what you do. The only option you have is to run, right? To just say, okay, I'm going to try to work for someone else. It's a problem with that. We've seen this before. Former founder of Apple, who died like a decade,
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, was found to have been colluding with other companies to do two things: set the rates that they would hire and fire employees and their salaries to cap it. So he was working with other people, and also to blacklist employees who try to when they make demands and didn't get the same from Apple and moved to Microsoft, so that they wouldn't either not get hired by Microsoft or would just be stuck in the same job, right? So these big corporations, not only is it difficult to talk one on one against a corporation as an employee, no matter how well paid you are, unless you're in the CFO or CEO or whatever, in which case you get scalped to get into another corporation and they'll pay you millions of dollars more. Happened to the former CFO from Activision. You also, these become industry standards, right? This is not just, we talk about Bobby Kotick, we talk about Activision, we talk about EA as individual corporations, but these are trends across the industry.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up it's a dream job, that argument, because the as you mentioned, this is back when people were garage coders, and it again it plays into that idea that like becoming the man, sort of. It's like, oh, this is a dream job because you're not the man, you're not going into an office 9 to 5 wearing a suit and stuff. You're doing what you want at home, and like making a little game and it's selling million. That's not the thing anymore. you're basically become the man. You're having employees go to an office and work a 9 to job. Well, uh, even more than 9 to 5, like a 12 to 12 job.
Yeah. I mean, we had situations where EA got sued and lost a lawsuit because, it was done by the girlfriends and significant others of employees saying, "Listen, our relationships are being destroyed by this dream job of yours. I don't see my boyfriend or girlfriend or significant other or spouse in the last 3 weekends because they're working very hard to get this dream stuff out of you. Quality of life, you know, just the ability to be able to, it's 5 o'clock. And just clock out and go, okay, I just want to have a beer or just sit down with my significant other in the couch and just binge on Netflix for the next 5 or 6 hours and fall asleep on the couch, and being able to even make that decision it's important. You can argue you shouldn't, you should take a rest, but that's entirely up to the individual. They should get the freedom to be able to do that. If you have to work 50 to 60 hours, you're going to be sleeping under your desk. That's something that happens regularly in the industry, and I get called out certain people, and that who have sort of championed that idea. And again, the garage coder became the wonderkin kids in the 1990s, where they were 18 and 19 years old. It's like, oh, I came in and I was like a big brain and I was the best programmer ever, and here came Doom or Quake or Civ, right?
Well,
It's like,
the guy from Boss Heat Productions, the guy who made Jazz Jackrabbit, and yeah, I can't remember his name. Bobby something. No, it's not Bobby something.
yeah,
I can't remember his name, but him, he was a wonderkin.
yeah. I mean, it's the owners of Rockstar, saying, "Oh yeah, we worked 60 hours a week." Our hardworking employers are literally dying in front of their computers because they want to make the best game ever. And it's like, no. What we're talking about was a small team of writers who have this sort of very intense thing going. It's like, yeah, come on.
So my thing is with with game developers, if the voice actors can do it,
Mm-hmm.
I think the game developers can do it. And this might sound like an insult. It's not, because I think voice actors would have more to lose than the game developers, because when you look at it, anyone can talk into a microphone. It might not be good. It might be crap, but this is what they used to do back in the day. It's like, hey, we need a voice actor. Hey, you're a woman. We need a woman voice actor. Get into the studio and record a line. I don't know how to act. You'll do fine. And that was notorious. But
It's still done, by the way. Yeah.
yeah, but like, what would game developers do if there was nobody to make the game? Like, you can't just pull like your mail clerk person and be like, hey, you go make a video game. I have no idea how to what I'm doing. Whoops, I deleted all the work that was being made. Or like, where would you get the talent? Like, where would they replace? I mean, maybe the people who chose not to participate, assuming that they're not the majority, it's not going to help. And you might get like some talent, like people who would be willing to replace them right up, like straight out of college people, but they're not going to be the same because they don't have the experience.
Mm-hmm. And here's something else I just thought about it, is that the developer slash publisher relationship. If developers would tend to be, developer studios would tend to be the little fish, right? If they were and adopted and they like, we're going to create a company, and as we create a company, it's going to be a union shop from the get-go, in essence, that company can use the union to protect itself from the the problems of being used and abused by big publishers. I think the fear might be the people who run those companies who are like, oh, if I'm a union shop, then no publisher is going to eventually buy my company. I get the $5 million or $1 billion, and whoever Notch, who got $1 billion plus because of Minecraft. But I think that was a union shop because I think he's from Northern Europe and it has to be unionized. I'm not really sure. I got to check that. Um, I can't do the sort of tech turnaround which I built up, make a basically a startup, make a couple of games that are great, and then EA and Activision or Capcom, whatever, they're gonna be knocking on my door, going like, "Hey, can we buy your company?" It's like, "Sure, give me 5 million, and I'm good to go." Right? Making the developers at the studio level unionize might be a thing that it's just because if they buy the studio, the union would come with them. They don't stop being members of a union. On the other hand, if you are in one of these relationships and you want to keep a modicum of independence, right? Um, the fact that your shop is unionized is like, well, I mean, you could fire me. I'm just a CEO of this now your division, but my employees are unions and they like me and we work together and I have their support and I know the union rep. You're gonna have to find someone else from management to talk to the union rep, and you deal with that. You deal with that mess. And I can see people in a big office in a corner, top building, going like, "Oh, oh, oh dear, no, we don't want to deal with the union. Why did you have this a union? Well, it's because developers have unionized, and you can't really make a studio without being a union shop. You can't hire people without them being union, because the benefits of being a union outweigh the ones that don't. And so you're a game developer looking for talent, 9 times out of 10 they're going to have a union card with them, right? So
Yeah.
but they know me, they trust me. I came from the ranks. I work with them. These are people I don't know, went to college with, whatever, and I know the union rep because my boy Bobby, which we were roommates. We can talk shop, no problem. But if you want guys who are going to be $1.5 million and kick me out of my own company, that's fine. But you deal with Bobby, and let me tell you, Bobby is a card shark. He's not gonna, he's not gonna just set up for anything. You deal with me or you deal with Bobby. What's your choice?
Oh, that just kind of reminds me that, or makes me think that if such a company would form a studio that already has a union in it, it's like I wonder if like the publishers would kind of band together and like not publish games from them, always constantly turning them down.
Yes and no. Because there's another thing that we have. It's that we have things like platforms like Steam and Epic, and now Epic and Steam and GOG are in competition. Especially Epic is trying to take a lot of stuff from Steam, right? People involved don't care. They're gonna publish anything that you chop them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if it happens to the one studio, yeah, they're gonna get cut off. But again, strength in numbers. That's the point of being in a union. If you see more and more, developers, individuals, as well as the studios unionizing at the studio level, it's like, okay, sure, find somebody who's not in a union, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you gonna start up your own developer? You're not gonna do this in house. You're publishers. Your business model, part of it is acquiring not only the studio, but let's think that's very important about the studios. It's the intellectual property. So without the intellectual property, you have no game. You have no tie-in novels. You have no, possibility to sell this to Hollywood, to make a movie out of this. You got nothing, right? So it's a bundle experience, right?
Hmm.
But it can happen, and it will happen if it's just one, a couple of studios who are not. And don't remember, we also have the double A space as well, and that's a space I think where union studios can thrive because their developers are just big enough to work that. And also remember that you have consoles as well. You have two of the three major consoles are Japanese. And unions, and again, that spirit of the company working for the working for the spirit of the company is one that is baked into the Japanese consciousness, and kind of unions that well. I'm not to go back into that. So I think it's like, oh, Microsoft is going to ban that with the other AAA developers and not work with you guys. Okay, we'll go to Sony. We'll go to Nintendo. They want games in the new platforms. 2020 is around the corner. If Microsoft doesn't work with us, then, and not only that, the existing studios under Microsoft start unionizing, because I do that as well, who are you going to get your games with? They're strengthening numbers. As you say, if somebody does it by themselves, they're going to get screwed. If it becomes a trend, which is what the big bosses probably fear, then, it's a different story. It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard fought. I mean,
no, it's not.
And they're going to pull all the stops. And companies like Walmart, stuff like that, literally have like training videos that are anti-union videos.
I worked, like I mentioned before, I worked with them before.
Yep. Yeah, so Target, Walmart, they all have that. So, yeah, there's a lot of union busting stuff out there. But I think if there was a time to do it, especially now that we talked about sort of the upcoming, or one could argue we're in it right now, the gaming recession as opposed to the gaming crash. Now more than ever, employees and smaller studios should think about forming to protect themselves, and unionization might be one of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways to go. So, like I said, I was going to be very pro-union in this statement, and here I am. That's what I'm saying. So I think, unless you have any more thoughts on this,
Nah.
well, we went a little over time. So, Chapelman, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me pretty much under Chopamon pretty much anywhere. I am Chopamon _Aragon on Twitch and Twitter, and I am Chopamon on YouTube.
And you can find me here on the Lessons Learned podcast every Wednesday or Thursday if we have to make an alternate day under Lessons Learned 1. The 1 is important. And I'm playing Dragons, Dogmas, Dog Arisen, not Arisen, every day. And I'm going to be doing a couple of more things as well. Keep on the lookout on the weekends and other games as well. And of course, you can find the rebroadcast of this podcast on my YouTube channel under Lessons Learned. So thank you everybody for coming. And as always, we'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.